Hello. So, here we go. Day two. Day two of the fear of being seen. Okay, right. What are we talking about today? Okay, right. Beautiful. We're going to talk about this today. Right. So, yesterday I mentioned my journey of growth, of evolution and tools. Okay. So, one of the first things that I realized was I'm very much an empath. And what's an empath? So, an empath is someone who's really quite sensitive, intuitive, can feel energy. But what I also noticed with that was when I realised I was an empath, I was very much a people pleaser. Very much a people pleaser. And throughout my whole life, I aimed to please people and completely forgot about myself. Completely forgot about myself, my needs, my wants, because I just wanted to make people happy. I just wanted to make people happy. And when I dug deep down into that, I realised that, and how I did that was like, I asked why. I always, if something comes up for me and it's really quite emotional and I'm feeling something like I'm feeling anger or I'm feeling hurt or I'm feeling pain, I really sit down with it and I really sit and go, why? Why am I feeling this? But why am I feeling that? And why did that happen, and why? Like, I always ask why until I get to the bottom of the solution. And when I started asking why I was a people pleaser and why I people pleased throughout my whole life, I realized it was something that stemmed from early childhood. And it was an opportunity for me to then go in and really look at that and approach it head on. And we'll talk about how I did that on another video on one of the days. So I realised I was a people pleaser and I lacked boundaries, like huge boundaries, throughout my whole life. Boundaries. I found it really hard to communicate my needs and my wants. I found it really hard to confront people that did me wrong. And really, 4 years ago, I felt like I was a walking doormat. And I came across like quite a hard nut sometimes. And the hard nut was like a defense. And some people may say that I was like a little bit, I don't know, crazy. Because I'd lose my shit. And I'd lose my shit because it got to the point that I didn't know how to control my emotions anymore. I didn't know how to communicate. I didn't know how to display like this. I'm not happy about this. I'm not happy about what you've done to me. I'm not happy about what you've said. I'm not happy. I didn't know how to do it. So the only way that I could communicate was lose my damn shit. And I did. Like, I lost it and the temper came out. And the temper was fierce. Like, whoa. And I always said, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. And when you push, that's when I lose my shit. And then I was deemed as the crazy one. And I wasn't crazy. I was just someone that didn't know how to control my emotions, my needs, my wants, because all I did was people please. And that's nobody else's fault. That's no one's fault. That's no one's fault but my own. Because I just lacked so many boundaries. And with that, like throughout the years, my life became an absolute shit show. Like, it really did. It really did. And it attracted so much toxic people in my life. And I'm toxic. Like, I don't want to label anything. And I can only start talking from my experience, okay? So, by toxic, I mean the same people that lacked boundaries, that couldn't communicate, and the only way that they could communicate was through anger themselves. So then when you've got two people like that, what happens is it just becomes really toxic and they feed off off each other. And then what happens is that both become really miserable. Like, I'm talking about relationships now, if you haven't noticed. Both become really miserable, unhappy, but don't know how to communicate to get out of that. Yeah. fascinating. It's fascinating with people pleasing. So how did I take that power back? I really, like I said yesterday, I looked in the mirror and I owned my shit. I looked at where I was people pleasing and where I had no boundaries, where I was lacking boundaries. I was lacking boundaries in myself, lacking boundaries in relationships. I was like looking for something external to keep me happy, but then when it wasn't keeping me happy, I didn't know how to communicate. It was just this complete cycle of unhappiness. And with that, because I couldn't communicate, because I couldn't voice, because I wanted to people please, I molded myself into certain types of people in order to fit in order to go with the flow, in order to not cause conflict, to make peace. I was like molding myself into someone who I'm really not. So by the end of by the time I woke up and realized all of this, like I said yesterday, I didn't know who the fuck I was, because I'd molded myself into so many different people, which was beautiful because those different types of people all had some part that I could pull from and make me who I am now, know who I am now. Those strengths, those weaknesses, the heart, the love that came from being those type of people. Like, there was so much love I gave, there was so much love that I poured out to all my like relationships, friends, romantic, family. Like, there was so much that I gave, and I got so frustrated because it was never reciprocated. And it's not about I do this for you and you do this for me. It wasn't about that. So boundaries is a huge lesson for me, and a huge lesson that I had to really step up to and really put in place was boundaries. And boundaries really is something with regards to self-worth. You know, I had no self-worth, none whatsoever. None. Now I have my boundaries. And by boundaries, I mean I speak up now. I'm not scared of communicating my needs. And some people don't like it. Like, the relationships, friendships, etc., that I built throughout my life, some fell away because I started voicing and they didn't like this version of me. They didn't like this version of Kerry when I stood up and I took my power back and I went, no, we're not doing this anymore. This is not a good situation to be in. I'm going to voice what I need to voice. I'm not going to people please anymore. And people fell away from my life, which is beautiful because they were so used to this version of me. And they weren't getting what they were needing from that relationship anymore, and nor was I. And now I stand in a place where I communicate. I know my worth. I set my boundaries. And if something happens, I communicate that. I voice that. I call people out on their shit. Because I'm in an energy that if I were to ever upset someone unintentionally, because everything I ever do, if I upset someone, it's always unintentionally. I never go out of my way to cause harm or drama because I don't associate with drama. I just can't do drama. Even talking about it irritates me. I literally just call people out on their shit, and I would really hope that someday, if I were to upset them, and the relationships I have in my life now simply is, if I'm like doing something that's causing hurt or pain, they call me out on it, and I love it. I love people that are like, hey Kerry, like, you know, I love you, but this happened, and do you want to maybe explain it to me? Because this is how I approach things, because there's always like a different perspective, and it's always the intention. Some people can hurt you, but they don't have the intention to hurt you, and some people do. Communication, boundaries, communication, first steps, second steps. Look at